And so that feeling of letting yourself arrive on your mat on Monday morning, with however your body is feeling, however your mind is feeling. It's quite a busy time of year, and as there's been for lots of this year, lots of uncertainty. Another big exhalation. And when you're ready, you can start to let your head roll a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left. And as you do so, just be aware of the weight of your head. So you're really trying to give the weight of your head to the floor. And also be aware, or just notice how it feels as you roll your head. So how does your neck feel? And sometimes as we roll our head, we become aware of how maybe the back of our head is a bit more lumpy than we might imagine. Or it might feel very smooth. And so maybe once, twice more, let your head roll from side to side. And then let your head come to settle in a comfortable place, somewhere in the center. And if the back of your neck still feels a bit tight, you could bring your hands around to the back of your head and interlink your fingers and gently lift your head up and lengthen out your neck without pulling on it too much. Just sort of ease it out. Good, that's nice. And then let your arms come to rest on the floor beside you. And bring your attention down to the back of your pelvis, to the contact of your footprints on the floor. And then start to let your knees tilt to the right and to the left. And so as we do this familiar movement, using it to help you feel your body. So we're moving the sort of lower part of our body, but the feelings might, the feeling of the movement might sort of move up into your ribs, your low ribs. So just really noticing what you feel and keeping the movement comfortable and easy. And just a few more times, knees tilting to the right and to the left. Not feeling that you have to push anything at all. But equally, if it feels easy and you're enjoying the movement, you don't have to keep it tiny. Very nice. And then pause in the center. And you're going to fold your right knee into your chest and hold around. I think it's quite nice. You hold around the top of the knee, or you could interlink your fingers around the back of the back of your thigh, the back of your knee. So that's also nice. And just have a breath or two there. And you're going to keep that knee folded in towards your chest, and you're going to lengthen your left leg out on the floor. And once you've lengthened your left leg out, yes, make sure you've got enough room to lengthen it out. You could then roll your leg a little bit. This is the long leg. So keep the feeling of the right knee folding in towards you. The arms can just be helping that feeling of the knee resting down towards your chest. So the left leg could roll a bit on the floor. You could stretch into your heel. You could spread your toes. It's fine to have socks on. So we can sort of activate that leg a little bit, and then we can just let it go and relax. That's nice. Just have another breath or two here with one knee, so the right knee folded in towards you, the left leg long on the ground. And then from here, bring your right foot to stand on the floor. That's it. And then fold that left knee in towards your chest. Good. So the leg that was long is now folded in towards you. You can hold around the top of the knee, or you can interlink your fingers around the back of your thigh. And then lengthen your right leg out on the floor. And again, just think about what movements you could do to help that leg settle and release. So you could bounce your knee, you could roll your leg, you could stretch into your heel and spread your toes. So we're just trying to give the weight of the long left leg to the floor and feel that the right knee is resting in towards your chest. Let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. And then leave your right leg long, and now lengthen out your left leg to join it. And see how it feels to lie with two long legs on the ground. And again, whatever you feel that you'd like to do to help the legs lengthen. So it could be a little bit of rolling the legs or bouncing the knees. And again, let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. Feel the length of your body on the ground. And then from here, what I'd like you to do, disturbing yourself as little as possible, is to roll over onto your belly. So I would suggest you keep your head where it is rather than sort of turn your head around on the mat. So you just roll over onto your belly and settle on your belly. So you could start with your forehead, so one hand resting on top of the other and your forehead resting on your hands if you like that, or the side of your cheek resting on the back of your hands, and give your pelvis a little bit of a wiggle. So what you're trying to do is just settle on your belly. Pelvis a little bit of a wiggle. That's nice. Maybe settle for a moment, let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. And going to bend your knees so you can take the soles of your feet towards the ceiling, and then see how it feels to let your feet tilt from side to side. That's it. And of course, if this isn't comfortable for your lower back, you can try taking your feet a bit lower, a bit nearer to the ground, or you can just miss it out. That's it. But just keep the legs really relaxed, and it's just the side to side movement of the feet. And I know that some of you really like this, and if it's not for you, you don't have to do lots of it. Okay, so a couple more times, letting the feet tilt from side to side. And then let your legs come back onto the floor, let the legs feel heavy. It's often nice if we let the heels roll out. Often that means the legs can be heavier. It's not the same for everyone, but often that's the case. And then let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. And slide your hands a little bit further forwards on the floor. So you've got your arms now, one arm either side of your head. And you're just going to do a simple lifting movement. So as you exhale, sinking into your forearms and your elbows, letting your head lift away from the floor, and trying to feel that you're using the muscles in your upper back. So also the chest may lift a little bit. Sheila, you could probably take your arms in a bit more of a circle around your head. So just that's it, sort of take the hands a little bit further forwards. Good. And do this a few times. So just this simple movement of lifting the head away from the floor. It's probably really helpful to do this as you exhale. And I find it helpful, hopefully helpful. On the out breath, maybe the head feels a bit lighter, and we root down through the elbows, through the forearms. So perhaps once or twice more. So moving on the out breath, you could stay up and receive an in breath, or you could bring your head back down as you breathe in. So it's up to you. Good. And then make this your last one. And then from being on your belly, you're going to fold back into child pose. Just briefly in child pose. And when you arrive in child pose, try and give your pelvis a bit of a wiggle in child pose, which is something I'm enjoying at the moment. Not always, yeah. So is it in child pose? Can we give our pelvis a bit of a wiggle? It might mean we're leaning on our elbows. Just this feeling of wiggling the pelvis, settling down for a breath or two in child. And from child pose, then come onto hands and knees. And you're going to lengthen each leg out behind you, tucking your toes under. You might feel, no, you probably could keep your socks on for longer. So lengthen each leg out behind you, tucking your toes under, letting the back of the knee open, feeling that stretch perhaps through the back of the calf. And then on hands and knees, we're going to do some cat movements and some tail wagging movements. So in your own time, settling down, how does it feel to round your back to the ceiling, to dip your spine down to the floor, rounding and dipping. And so quite often I will do these and think my lower back feels quite tight, and then I'll move on to a little bit of tail wagging. See if that can help release it. You can also do your tail wagging by swinging your legs from side to side, if you like that one. So just, you know, all these little movements that we're quite familiar with on hands and knees. You can come back to some more tail wagging. That help us to release a little bit around the middle of ourselves. And all the time, just as you're moving, either in cat or wagging your tail. Yes, rocking forwards and back is nice as well, Rosie. Just notice how the middle of yourself feels. So I suppose around the lower back predominantly, but also if you're feeling tight between your shoulder blades, rounding your back to the ceiling can be nice, as can dipping down. Okay. We're going to do something else on hands and knees. I'm just wondering, so it might be good to, for a moment, come into up kneeling or sit back in kneeling and just give your hands a little bit of shake out. And we're then going to come to this sort of way into lunge, where we start by lengthening one leg back behind us and rolling around a little bit, coming onto the top of the toes and so on. And then we take this leg out to the side. So first of all, the leg's back behind us. Doesn't matter which leg, because we'll do both. You can see how it feels to roll side to side across the ball of the foot. You can see how it feels to come onto the top of the toes. So that's a bit of a stretch for the front of the ankle and the toes. So just, you know, what are the possibilities of moving your leg when it's back behind you? And then, if you then take your leg a bit out to the side, the possibilities expand, because you can then experiment with rolling onto your heel as well as onto your toes. You can still come onto the top of your toes. So there's maybe a bit more room for movement. Yeah. And a bit more. So these are really good for finding this range of movement through our hip joints. And then from here, from the leg being out to the side, we're going to bring this leg forwards into lunge. So at this point, you obviously need to start to bend your knee a little bit, and might not be the most elegant movement as we creep our foot. And we're going to keep our foot on the outside of our hands to start with. So if you crept your foot round, you then might need to sort of shuffle your back knee back a bit by tucking your back toes under and walking that leg back. So we're coming into our lunge with our foot on the outside of our hands. And we're having a few breaths here, giving the weight of the pelvis to the floor. And then it might be that you'd like to do a bit of your rocking forwards and back in this one, easing forwards and back. And I always find it works better if I then have my foot in between my hands. You don't have to, you might like it with your foot on the outside. So at this point, if you do want to be easing back a bit, you might want to have your foot flat. And you can ease back, you can come towards your lunge. And so I think this is particularly if, you know, if these movements feel tight on a cold Monday morning, it's probably not, we're not going to feel our easiest in lunge. Okay, so another maybe ending up in lunge. And then before we come on to side two, maybe one last time rocking yourself back and just having a couple of breaths in this sort of rocked back position. And then we're going to come back onto hands and knees, and we're going to do the other side. So I'm just turning around, so you don't want to see my leg, but in case you do. So you're going to be starting off lengthening the other leg back behind you now. So this was your back leg in lunge. We come back to that again, that movement of what can we do? How can we move the leg, come onto the top of the foot, the side of the foot, the underside of the toes, the top of the toes, when the leg is back behind us. But we can probably feel that the range of movement is a little bit more limited here. So then we can take our leg out to the side. And that's when we can probably find more movement. Possibly rolling onto the heel, onto the tucking the toes under. So really good to work the feet there, as well as coming onto the top of your foot. So noticing how this feels through the sort of all the way from the foot up to the hip. And then from here, from the leg being out to the side, we'll start to move that foot. However, you know, if you're on a slidey surface, it's easier to slide the foot forward. So the foot coming forwards into lunge on the outside of your hands to start with, and walking your back leg away a bit more, so that you can let your pelvis drop down to the floor as much as you know, works for you. Have a couple of big breaths here. You can support yourself through your hands. This is with the hand on the outside of the feet. And then if you want to do a little bit of rocking forwards and back, you might find you like doing that with your foot on the outside of your hands, or you can bring your foot between your hands and then untuck your back toes and then come to a little bit, some of those forwards and back movements. So as we rock back, we can look back between our legs, feel our spine curve forwards. As we come into lunge, we might like to come up onto our fingertips a little bit, let our gaze come forwards. So there's a little bit of echo of cat in this. When you've sort of gone forwards and back a little bit, you might like to have a few breaths in lunge. Probably letting the shoulders soften is a good focus for lunge. Very nice. And then we will stay for a couple of breaths rocked back. So rocking back. So at this point, I keep my chest pretty close to my thighs and my front knees bent, not expecting to straighten that leg out. And then we can ease our way out of here onto hands and knees. I think I have to look at my notes. Yes, we're going to be moving through dog pose into a forward bend and up into standing now. So yes, you could be in kneeling or up or down kneeling, giving your hands a shake out, or bringing the backs of your hands together if you like. Depends how much you're on your hands in your lunge. And then come onto hands and knees. So as we're coming into dog pose, you might want your hands quite wide apart, depending how your shoulders are feeling. I know mine are a bit tight, might be all that moving the Christmas tree around. So tucking your toes under. As you exhale, rock your hips back over your heels, pick your knees up off the floor. See how it feels to be in dog pose. So we're going to come into standing and then we will be coming back into dog in a little bit. So just see how this first dog pose feels. It might feel a little bit tight. It might not feel the most amazing dog ever. If it feels okay, have a few more breaths here. If you think, okay, that's enough of this dog for the moment, whenever you start to feel like that, then you're walking your hands in towards your feet, into a forward bend. And it might be in this first forward bend that you want to bend your knees and rest your elbows on your thighs. Again, depending how your lower back feels, how your forward bend feels. See if you can let your head go. You might be able to let your arms go if your lower back feels fine. Big exhalation. And then you can either roll up into standing with your arms hanging, or walk your hands up the fronts of your legs, arriving up into standing and having a little bit of a shake out or even a drink of water. Good. And then settle yourself in standing with a little distance between your feet. So we're going to do a few things in standing before we come into a couple of sequences. So I've just turned side on because what I'd like you to do is bend your knees and wiggle your pelvis. We're doing quite a lot of this recently. Yeah, bend the knees, wiggle the pelvis, and we're just trying to shake that sort of middle part of ourselves. Very nice. And that feeling that perhaps we can let the tailbone drop down, release the lower back. And then let yourself settle in standing, so let your knees straighten but not lock. Maybe have a moment here, closing your eyes, feeling your footprints on the floor. exhaling, dropping your shoulders. So just feeling yourself in standing for a moment or two, because often I find when I first come into standing that I feel a little bit all over the place. So we'll come back into standing again once we've done a few more things. So open your eyes and come to the one where we're swinging our arms, slapping our arms onto the sides of our body. So this, yes, a good Monday morning wake up. Let the feet come along. Feel the whole of your body in movement. So again, if like me, you're feeling a little bit sort of achy shoulders, upper back, this is quite good for getting that part of you moving, but without, forcing it too much. Okay. And then settle down again, feet a little distance apart. Bring your hands into prayer pose in front of you. So now we're going to focus in on the arms now swinging on their own. So you're going to let a breath come in, and as you exhale, take your arms down and then up. Let a breath come in, drop your shoulders away from your ears. Yes, that was the right move. Rosie, turning around so you can swing your arms out to the sides, let them cross in front of you without hitting any walls or yes, anyone who might be nearby. I've just got to turn my heating off, so carry on swinging your arms a couple of times so I go with obviously warming up now. In fact, the sun's coming out. So let that go, let the arms hang, a little shake out, and then come back again to hands in prayer pose in front of you. So we're going to take the arms in the same movement, but we're going to keep them up this time and then come into our reaching movement. So hands in prayer pose, let a breath come in. As you exhale, take your arms down and then up. Good. And then come to reaching up into one arm and the other one. And I probably always say this, you don't need to look up as you're reaching up. It's quite tempting. That's it, reach up. As you reach, you can shift your weight onto your reaching leg side. Okay, in a moment, we're going to reach up and catch our arm, but let's perhaps bring the arms down for a moment because it can get, not everyone likes their arms being up. So let's have a breath. Let's come back to here. Let's let a breath come in. Let's exhale, take the arms down and then up. So this time, reach up through your right arm. I'm just kneeling, making sure you reach up through your right arm and catch your left hand around your right wrist, or or the other way, it's fine. So you're drawing yourself up and over, sort of using that other arm to draw yourself up and over. Feeling, and you can shift your weight. So you're just trying to feel really long through the right side of the body. Come back to the center, swap your hands over. So now the right hand is caught around the left wrist. You're drawing yourself up and over. When we come down from this, we're going to go all the way down into a forward bend. And it might be that you want to rest your elbows on your thighs, or it might be that you want to release all the way down to the ground. So just see how this second forward bend feels. That's it. So if your lower back needs support, rest your elbows on your thighs. Folding forwards, seeing how it feels to be in your forward bend. Maybe have one more big exhalation in your forward bend, and then we'll roll back up with another out breath. So let a breath come in as you exhale down into your heels, rolling up into standing or walking your hands up the fronts of your legs. And arriving back in standing, feet a little distance apart. And I'm going to come side on again because we're now going to be bringing our weight forwards into the balls of our feet. We're just starting quite easily. We're coming into a little balance, but we've got both feet on the ground. We're letting our heels come up. So this one that we do quite regularly. It's a little bit of a balance. It's also a bit of a workout for our feet. We're getting the toes to bend, finding support through the arches of the feet. Okay. Let's see, the next time, if you come up and you feel reasonably steady, you could then take your arms up for a couple of breaths. Let your shoulders drop down. And if you don't want to take your arms up, but you want to do something with your arms rather than letting them hang, you could always touch your hands in prayer pose in front of your chest. That's always quite good for just that's nice, bringing the arms out of the equation. Good. Very nice. Okay. Let's come back down and then we'll do a slightly different version. Just give your legs a little shake out. So now what we're going to do is the same balance, but with a mudra. So once we're up balancing and you've got your arms up, you're then going to touch your thumb onto one of your fingers. I would do the same finger in each hand. Doesn't have to be the index finger. And you could also touch your thumb to the nail rather than the pad of the finger. But yeah, my brain would struggle if I was touching a different finger in each hand. That might just be my Monday morning brain. So let's come into the balance first of all. So let our weight come forwards onto the balls of our feet. See if we can, find a steady place there. And then as you exhale, let your arms float up. Let your shoulders soften. And then at this point, just see which finger are you drawn to touch with your thumb. And you can touch the pad of the finger and the pad of the thumb, or the pad of the thumb can touch to the nail of the finger. Good. Okay. Have another breath or two with your arms up. And then what we're going to do from here is bring our arms down to shoulder height. And then we're really trying to let the arms soften here. So turning the palms upwards. Good. We've still got that thumb and finger touching. Lovely. Very nice. And if you find that your arms get tired out to the side, but you could balance for a little bit longer, you could gather your hands into your chest. So they come in front of you, you're still touching your fingers together, you're still balancing. Well done. And then come down, release the mudra, let yourself roll down into another forward bend. Letting your head go, letting your arms go. If in this forward bend you feel drawn to either your sort of weeping willow movements, trailing your hands around the fronts of your feet, what else? You might feel drawn to going into a squat, possibly, maybe not. The other one that I'm quite keen on at the moment is bending my knees so my chest comes towards my thighs and then catching my wrist, catching one wrist, catching my hands around the back of my legs. I usually catch one. I probably was just thinking I always catch my left hand around my right wrist, so I probably should swap. And then yes, very nice. Do roll back up into standing when you're ready and have a little shake out. So I was having a little drink of water. We've got a sequence we're going to do a couple of times, which is going to take us from the back of our mat down onto hands and knees and coming into a couple of our different ways into face up dog. So we've already opened out through the front of our body in lunge. So come towards the back of your mat and just settle your hands in prayer pose. And we're going to be moving, taking our arms up and then into a forward bend dog pose, hands and knees, a child, I think. So maybe for a moment, close your eyes, feel the contact of your footprints on the floor, feel the contact of your palms in prayer pose or Anjali Mudra. And then let a breath come in. And as you exhale, you can open your eyes now, take your arms down and then up. Drop your shoulders away from your ears and then curl your arms in, curling down into a forward bend. Have a couple of breaths there. And then from your forward bend, you can walk your hands forwards into dog pose. Try and find a length for dog pose that feels good for you. Sometimes when we walk forwards, it strangely can feel more difficult, I find, to find the right length for dog. And then once you're in dog, have a couple of breaths there, bending your knees, both knees, one knee at a time. And from dog pose, you're going to fold down into child pose just for a breath or two so that you take the work out of your wrist. So if you prefer to sit in kneeling, you can do that. And then if you're in child pose, you can lengthen your arms forward so your elbows come off the floor. And if you're in kneeling, you can just come into this long. So we're coming into this long hands and knees, which I always find if I'm in child pose and lengthen my arms forwards and then come up onto hands and knees, I'm in the right length. So my hands are further forwards than my shoulders. And just to start with a couple of times, you're going to do this rocking forwards movement. So you're not really necessarily going all the way into face up dog unless it feels terribly easy, but you're, I suppose more than anything, you're just seeing how does it feel to take your weight through your arms and to let the pelvis start to come forwards. And then what we're going to do in this first round of the sequence is we're going to use our tail wagging movement to take us back to child pose and forwards towards face up dog. Again, you know, you just go as far as you want. You don't need to push those face up dog movements. It's very nice to do the tail wagging back into child pose. If you feel that, yeah, you want to come forwards. And equally, if you feel that you get back in child and you need to give your hands a bit of a, wrists a bit of a rest, stay in child pose. If you come into face up dog, then your gaze is forwards. Just make sure that your shoulders are down away from your ears and the back of your neck stays long. So we might be looking up a little bit. We don't want to look up too much, otherwise the neck might not be so happy. Let me see. Might be good from this face up dog, just have a breath or two in child or kneeling, because we're going to go back into standing through a dog pose. And I think you just want to give your wrists and your hands a rest for a moment. So if you're sitting in kneeling, you can rest the backs of your hands on your thighs. If you're in child pose, yes, exactly, Linda, you can do that one, bring the backs of the hands together. Sometimes just this one where we rest the backs of the hands on the thighs is nice. Exhale, let the shoulders soften and drop. And then come back onto kneeling, but just a normal kneeling now, because sorry, not kneeling, hands and knees, a normal hands and knees, but possibly with your hands wider apart. So then we can come into a really comfortable, that's fingers crossed, really comfortable dog pose. So hands and knees, tucking the toes under, exhaling, rocking your hips back over your heels, picking your knees up off the floor. Arriving in dog pose and seeing how it feels. Exhaling, obviously bending the knees. Another breath or so in dog, and then you can walk your hands back in towards your feet, so back into your forward bend. And then we'll roll up into standing, touching the backs of the hands together, as long as you don't need to walk your hands up your thighs. So trailing your hands straight up the front of your body, straight up to the ceiling, feeling long and tall. Breathing in and then exhaling, your arms come out in a big circle. Good. Back to prayer pose. So we're going to go down to the floor, and then this time we're going to do our face up dog from sort of cat. So exactly the same thing, but just slightly different way into face up dog. So let a breath come in. As you exhale, take your arms down and then up. Feel long and tall, receive an inhalation, and then exhaling down into your forward bend. Breath or two in your forward bend, and then walking your hands on into dog pose. Couple of breaths in your dog, and then folding down into child pose. Or kneeling, just let the weight come off your wrists and hands for a moment. Breath or two. And always remember, if you're in child pose, your knees don't need to stay together. Your knees can go wider apart if that's more comfortable. And then in child pose, slide your arms forwards on the floor so your elbows come off the ground. And then come up onto hands and knees, keeping your hands. So you come into your long hands and knees. Again, you might want to, a couple of times, just, that rocking forwards. We're rocking towards face up dog without doing anything around our middle like cat or side bending. And then tuck your toes under, round your back up a bit, rock your hips back over your heels. Let a breath come in, and then we'll travel forwards into face up dog, rounding our back, looking back behind us until the shoulders are right over the wrists, and then we can untuck the toes, let the pelvis hang. Then we can reverse that movement. So start to rock back, tuck the toes under, start to look back. Again, receive an in-breath, and then as you exhale, that's when you start to travel forwards. But try to feel it's your pelvis that's leading that movement. And only when your shoulders are over your hands do you then start to look forwards. Good, untuck your toes. Do that one more time. So reverse the movement. Rocking back, toes tucked under, rounding the back, looking back, letting the breath come in, traveling forwards, rounding the back, looking at your pelvis. Ending up in the last face up dog. And then from here, maybe just folding back into child pose or kneeling for a breath or two, just again to take the weight of the hands. So child pose or kneeling, whichever you prefer. And then in your own time, we're going to be coming through dog pose and a forward bend, rolling back up into standing. Coming back to a little bit more balancing and standing. Nothing too scary though. So hands and knees, tucking your toes under, rocking your hips back over your heels, picking your knees up off the floor into your dog. 2 or 3 breaths in dog. Bending your knees as much as you like. And then walking your hands in towards your feet. When you're in your forward bend, touching the backs of your hands together. And rolling up into standing, so you trail your hands up the front of your body, up to the ceiling. Breathing in, that's it, and then a big circle with your arms. Good. Come towards the middle of your mat, give your arms and legs a shake out. We're going to do our little sequence of mini balances with the hands in prayer pose, I think, so it just takes them out of the equation. So settle down, I'm going to go side on a moment. Settle down with your feet a little distance apart so you can look at your feet. You might like a moment of closing your eyes and feeling your feet on the floor. You could, at this point, choose which foot you're going to stand on. I think I won't say lefts and rights, so you can choose which foot you're going to stand on. And then open your eyes. And I've got my hands in prayer pose just to sort of keep them occupied. And it does help with the focus. So I'm going to shift my weight onto one foot. And then we're going to slide the other foot back behind us. Yeah, and flip onto the top of the toes. And just see how that feels. And you could even bounce your toes on the floor a little bit if you like. Or you could keep the toes down, see how it feels to straighten the back knee. And then from there, you're going to slide the foot back in and come into a sort of mini tree pose. So you could completely take that foot off the floor, or you could have a few toes on the floor, letting your knee turn out to the side a little, keeping your pelvis facing forwards. Good. Okay, breath or two here. Then let your toes come onto the floor. And let your standing knee bend a little bit. And at this point, I always find it helps me to look down rather than forwards, not all the way down, but just have my gaze a couple of meters on the floor in front of me. And we're going to cross the raised leg over. Now, at this point, you still could have your big toe on the ground, or the foot could hang. And just dropping the shoulders. How does it feel to have another couple of breaths on a bent leg, balancing on a bent leg? Remember, if your knee isn't so happy, looking down rather than forwards can help the knee go a bit easier. Very nice. Yes, then we can come down, we can have a little bit of a shake out. Very good, and then we'll try the other side. So, bring your hands back into prayer pose. We'll come on to the first movement, which was obviously shifting our weight onto the foot we didn't stand on, and then sliding the other foot back behind us. And when we've done that, you can either, bounce your toes a bit on the floor, or you can straighten your back knee, see how that feels. Sometimes my foot goes a bit crampy. And then slide your foot back in. Let your knee turn out to the side a little. You're coming into your mini tree pose. Your foot could be completely off the floor or on a few toes on the floor. Just the big toe. Good. Breath or two here. So in tree pose, it's just helpful to be looking straight ahead. The soft focus. And then let some toes come onto the floor. Let your standing knee bend. Now maybe let your gaze come down a little bit. Cross your top leg over. And have a couple of breaths, balancing on the bent knee. And I keep saying this about having the gaze coming down because it really helps my knees. Otherwise, they're not always so happy in this one. And then come down, have a little bit of a shake out. And we're going to go into a forward bend with our feet this little distance apart. And then once we're down there, we're going to make our feet a little bit wider. They don't really need to be any wider than the narrow edge of your mat, but let's start with. So have a look at your feet and then let yourself roll down into a forward bend. And then once you're in your forward bend, you could, bend your knees a little bit, rest your elbows on your thighs. Once you're in your forward bend, you're just going to see, can you walk your feet, toes, heels, a little bit wider? So your feet are probably as wide as the narrow edge of your mat, and see how that feels. And at that point, you might then release your arms to the ground. Keep your weight down in your heels. So slightly wider apart forward bend. Just have another couple of breaths there. And then let a breath come in as you exhale, sink into your heels, roll back up into standing. And when you arrive in standing, we're going to come into this side lengthening movement where one arm comes up. The bottom arm's heavy and floppy. We're actually going to stay. So often we move in and out of this one. But actually now we're just going to stay for perhaps 2 or 3 breaths. I don't find this particularly easy. I am letting my pelvis shift towards my raised arm side. That's up to you. Bottom arm floppy. Good, okay. That's long enough for me. Come back to the centre. It could be the raised arm thing that makes it challenging. And I think as we raise our arm and we shift our pelvis, the ribs really open on that side, and then I always find that makes it a bit more challenging to breathe. Keep giving away your bottom arm. That makes a big difference to me. If my bottom arm can be floppy, then everything feels a little bit easier. And then yes, come out, have a little shake out. Now, I just wanted to show you, I think before we do the next thing, this is just a little bit of, we're going to come into a wider forward bend. And from this forward bend, What I want you to do is walk your hands around so you can come back into another lunge. And then we'll walk our hands and go the other way. Okay, so just do it easily. If this doesn't work for you, just stop. If you feel it's getting you into an uncomfortable place. So you obviously want to be facing the long edge of your mat, feet, however is comfortable. Feet parallel still. Yes, don't let the toes turn out. And then you can let yourself fold forwards, and perhaps the sort of preliminaries in this. So just a little bit of bending one knee, bending the other. So before you rush on into your lunge, bending one knee, bending the other. And obviously as we move from wide forward bend into lunge, we are having to bend the knee that we turn towards. So we're starting to let our feet pivot on the floor. So just our little sort of Christmas thing. And it probably depends how wide your feet ended up. So I've come down to my lunge, but I sort of think actually I could lengthen out in my lunge a little bit more. I would have to remember when I come back into the wide forward bend to walk my back knee in. Okay, so now you're going to try and reverse that movement. So if, like me, you lengthened out into your lunge, you might need to walk the knee in. So can you reverse that movement and come back into your wide forward bend without it being enormously wide? And can you walk your hands around and come down onto the other side of lunge? And again, this time you can walk your back leg away if you want to. And then from here, if it's not working for you, just make your way down through a forward bend and dog pose, because from here, we're going to step from lunge into dog. And then just a couple of quiet breaths in child. So don't worry if you got into a bit of a muddle in going from your wide forward bend into lunge on Zoom. That's just our little end of the year bit of fun or otherwise. So a couple of breaths in dog and then a little fold down into child pose. And then from child pose, we're going to come and just do a little bit of twisting. So in a moment, we're going to do the twist that we've worked on a bit on a Monday, where we have one foot stepped forwards. But what I'd like you to do first of all is either being down, Casper has joined us, hello Casper, either in sitting down kneeling, now going to obviously come and wash himself, if you want to say, or in sitting up kneeling. So if you're in up kneeling, it's quite nice to do quite a sort of loose swinging twist. And if you're in sitting kneeling, you can, yeah, it's a bit perhaps, you can also do sort of swinging twist, but it is actually quite nice up here. And then if you're in down kneeling and you turn both sides, come into up kneeling, because from here we are then going to step one foot forwards. So yes, Sharon and Emma, I've been doing this twist some other classes, but mainly on a Monday actually. So this twist where we make sure we've got a little sideways hip width distance. Yeah, you really don't want to be teetering around here. And then we turn towards the front leg. The back arm can be heavy and relaxed, or it can rest on the pelvis. And we're really looking for this feeling of the shoulder, the back shoulder moving back, so that we feel wide in the front of the chest. Back shoulder moving back and dropping. Good. This can be a really nice twist for feeling open in the front of the chest. And we'll do the other side in a moment. There's variations we can do from here, but I actually think for the twisting part, this is maybe the nicest part of it. Come back to your up kneeling, and then we'll do the other side of the twist. So again, you step your foot forwards, use your hands as you need to. You make sure you feel steady here. If your back knee needs extra padding, do put a blanket under it. Make sure you've got your hip width distance so you feel steady, and then turning towards your front knee. So this hand can come to rest on the front leg thigh. And then it's up to you with your back arm, whether you rest your hand on the back of your pelvis or you let your arm hang. But we're trying to feel that we're sending this back shoulder back. So keep upright. That's it, yes, that's it. Keep upright and send the shoulder back. That's it. So Helen, actually, I think the hand you've got on the back needs to be the hand that's on your leg. That's it, yes, good. Okay, untwisting. And then we're just going to come on to, nearly ready to lie down, we're just going to come on to hands and knees, and you're going to lengthen out by coming into plank pose. So come on to hands and knees towards the front of your mat, and this just means we come into a sort of neutral place for the body. We're not asymmetrical now, so resting down through the arms, stretching back through the heels, feeling that our pelvis is suspended, maybe feeling our abdominals starting to work to keep our pelvis suspended. And whenever you've had enough, do come down. You can briefly fold into child pose. And then from child pose, you're going to slither forwards onto your belly. And we're just going to have a few quiet breaths. So if you're much happier in child than on your belly, you could stay a bit longer in child. But I think it's really interesting after we've moved to come onto our belly. You can just lie however you like, have your arms however you like. So it might be if your head is turned to one side, you have the arm you're turning towards beside your head, and you have the other arm along the side of your body. That can be quite comfortable for the shoulders. And just see how it feels for another couple of cycles of breath to settle on your belly. Of course, you can wiggle your pelvis or anything else that would help you settle there. But I just would like you to settle and feel the movement of your breath within you while you're lying on your belly. Good. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. Maybe one more cycle of breath. And then from your belly, you're going to, again, sort of disturbing yourself as little as possible, roll onto your back. And if at this point you need to put on anything warmer, you might have to disturb yourself a little bit more. I've got I'm going to move it, just it's the most amazing amaryllis. I hope it won't collapse when I move it, but I'm just going to move it so it's here. I can't believe, yeah, it's incredibly stunning. So I'll leave it there. You don't have to sit up to see it now. Got a couple of others on the way, but this one's, yeah, all flowering together. So settle onto your backs, and just when you first arrive on your back, just do whatever you feel drawn to doing within reason. So it might be lying there, yes, folding the knees in is always nice. Yeah. So, but really whatever you feel drawn to doing. I've got a couple of little things we're going to do. At this point, yes, legs up is nice, yeah. So really important we give our bodies a little bit of what they want. If what they want is lying there quietly, then that's what we do. And then I thought it would be nice to revisit probably the very first thing we did. So settling down with your knees bent and your feet standing on the floor. Maybe starting by rolling your head to the right and to the left. So that sort of easing side to side movements. for your head. And then settling your head down and then coming to let your knees tilt to the right and to the left. Oh, lovely. And seeing how that feels now. Lovely. That looks really nice. There's quite a nice sort of slow, to say lazy, sort of languid quality to your movements now, which looks really nice. Pause in the center and take your feet a bit wider apart. And then carry on tilting your knees with your feet a bit wider. And see how that feels. So from here, if you like, you could then let your knees go all the way down towards the floor on one side. If they don't quite reach and you have a cushion to hand, you can slide a cushion under one of your knees, or you can just stay tilting the knees from side to side. We're not going to be here for long. And if your knees are resting on one side, you could let your head roll in the opposite direction. That's it, just to help that shoulder stay settled on the ground. And then you have a breath or two with this sensation of the legs resting one way, the shoulder and the head resting the other way. Maybe this feeling of sort of falling away in the center of yourself. And yes, do move on to the second side as well. Okay. And when you've had a couple of breaths on the second side, then you settle yourself in the center, and we're going to focus in on our breathing. So you could put on a blanket if you want to feel warm. If you're not feeling warm, or socks. Yeah, so you can always put your legs up on a bed or a sofa. Oh, that's very nice. Bolster there, Rosie. Good. Just making yourselves comfortable. And once you have settled comfortably, you're going to bring your hands to rest on your belly. So there's no rush. Get the things you need to be warm, but hands quite low down on your belly. So we're going to focus on our breathing with our hands just in a few different places on the front of ourselves. So the first place is hands low on the belly. And just gathering your awareness into the feeling of the breath. You might not in every place feel the breath that much, but you can also feel the contact of your hands. So the contact of your hands, have your hands sort of beneath your belly button to start. So the contact of your hands on your low abdomen. Maybe this part of your body responding to your breathing. Don't worry if you don't feel much movement. And just another breath or two here with the hands resting low down. The warmth and the weight of your hands on your belly. The hands feeling the movement of the belly feeling the contact of the hands. And from here, you're going to slide your hands up and out a little bit. So they come onto your bottom ribs. Yeah, the bottommost ribs, doesn't mean the very bottom rib, the sort of low ribs, slightly out to the side. And give yourself some time to settle. And notice what it feels like to have your hands in this place on the low ribs, maybe slightly to the side. And feeling the breath come in, feeling the breath leave you. Now maybe it's a sense of widening and narrowing around your middle. Again, not worrying if you don't feel much movement with the breath, that's fine. Again, you can feel the contact of your hands on this part of your body. And then the last place is to bring your hands sort of to the upper part of your chest, just beneath your collarbones. And find a comfortable place to rest your hands there. I think it's more comfy if your elbows remain on the floor. And so how does it feel to rest your hands on this upper part of your chest? To feel the movement of this part of your chest with your breathing. And I really like this place because I can feel sort of quite a light, soft breath here, and it might be very different for you. Again, just letting the body feel the warmth and weight of the hands, and letting the hands feel whatever movement there is in this upper part of the chest. So we're just going to lie quietly for maybe another minute or so, and you can stay with your hands where they are. You can go back to one of the other positions. You could rest your arms on the floor, your hands on the floor now. So whatever you'd like to do for this last minute. And just letting yourself settle. You can be aware of the movement of your breath, but just maybe sort of see if you can let your awareness be quite wide and spacious to encompass everything that's present for you right now. So it's fine for thoughts to arise, but we want to try to not get too fixed on any one thought. Let the breath flow in, the breath flow out. So thank you very much, everyone. And I was just really a bit sad then, because I was thinking normally